Yellow. Is the microphone working? Always the first question. Let's turn it down just a smidge. It's a teeny tiny smidge. Seems like the on-screen chat box isn't working. Which I guess is not the end of the world. Test. Oh, there it is. Neat. Starts a bit low. Alright. Test, test. Nice. No naming, I guess. Maybe I can make it a little bit bigger. No, don't work like that. Oh, interesting. There we go. Fine. Good enough. I'm not listening to Scott Pilgrim right now. Not sure why that ain't updating. But oh well. There we go. Alright, hi, welcome. I had some ideas in mind for what I wanted to do today. And I want to create something in VR that I can throw using these motion controllers. I want to be able to pick it up and basically chuck it somewhere. Which should be simple enough-ish. But in practice, I mean, I've done it before, but it doesn't mean I can do it now, turns out. I made these XR trackable devices, which track any of the nodes you want it to track, and basically all it does is sets the local position and local rotation to whatever the VR set gives you. So that's very simple. But now I kind of want to use this as well to track the velocity of whatever object I'm throwing around. My birds don't like the thunder outside. And I think the easiest way to do this is to introduce a new variable that is effective free. I have been working with Unreal this past week, pretty much in its entirety, so I have to switch between the names again. This is not C++, but I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm just going to call it velocity. And by default, it's the 0 vector. This, by the way, is pretty much exactly the same as just a new vector 3. But doesn't matter much. I prefer it this way because it's obvious what it is. Just don't use the wrong one when you start out. And I'll determine this based on my previous position and the current position. So if I deduct the previous position from the current position, I know exactly how far I've moved within a frame during an update. And that should give me enough information to create a vector that throws something in a certain direction. First I should maybe make something that can be thrown. So I'm gonna add a simple sphere. 3D object sphere. Make it a little smaller. 10 centimeters will be fine. I think put it at 0, 0, 0, somewhere in the middle. Yeah, where all my other stuff is as well. This thing, there's a sphere collider. I'm gonna add a rigid body to this, which allows me to apply gravity. Interpolate, yes. Collision detection, continuous, fine. Rotation, no phrasing for now. And if I run this, it should just fall. Yeah. Well, I can tell by the numbers changing. Can't really tell by anything else because oh yeah, I'm using the headset. It's probably somewhere far below me now. Wait, let me check. Yeah, it's out of sight. All right. At least it's falling. But because it has a rigid body, I can apply movement to it. Impulses. So, now, let's make this, I'm just going to call it, wait, I probably already have it. Oh no, bullet. I'm just going to call this projectile, which is pretty much the same as a bullet, but who's counting? I think these bullets are quite similar. Yep. Very similar, in fact. Maybe I should freeze the rotation of this as well. That just means that when it hits something, it doesn't also calculate how it should spin away. Because it doesn't matter for a sphere that's completely white and round. You won't be able to see it rotate anyway. I'm going to create a new game object script. Call it projectile. Or better yet, throwable or something. I'll call it throwable. Or grabbable. Because I guess if you can grab it and you just let it go with enough force, grabbable. I'm not sure if this is how you write this. Then you're basically throwing it. Ah, Google says that this is the correct way to spell this. It sounds like grabable. But I guess that's fine. Alright. And what I want this to do is basically, I think I can pretty much remove everything here for now. I'll include it again when I need it. Add a function to it, a method, public voids throw. Vector 3 direction. Well, actually, velocity, because it's not just a direction, it's also the amount of power we should throw it with. And what that should do, just add the private void start here. Add a private rigid body, underscore rigid body. Just gonna retrieve the component and start. By the way, if you don't like doing it in code, I do, but if you don't, just put serialized field in front of it, and it'll show up here. Wait, will it? Yes. As soon as I add it, projectile. Not projector. Oh no, wait, grabbable. Rigid body, and you can just can you drag this one, or just select this one. Yeah, it's the same thing. In the end, it's the same thing. You get a reference to that specific component. Yeah. And if I throw this, the rigid body dot velocity, I'll set it to the velocity that we got, which is probably going to be pretty slow. I don't know how strong the gravity is. We'll see. Is this all I need for now? Interpolate. Gotta make it kinematic. No, I don't have to make it kinematic, because I'm just giving it an impulse. Because I'm not controlling it fully. I'm just using it to provide impulse. Add force. Oh, you guys can see my autocomplete, I think. We'll be able to see. Force is this velocity, and the force mode is velocity change, which will basically just say whatever the current velocity of the object is, stop that, it's now this velocity. So even if it's already falling, it would stop to fall, apply this velocity, and then it would continue onwards. Continuous speculative. Okay. Don't think I've ever seen that before. Alright. Whitespace did not insert selected suggestion. I'm okay with that. Now, I think our gun can be removed from the player's hand now. I don't think we need it anymore. Instead, I'm gonna add another script to the player, or maybe I'll just abuse the extra. No, I'm gonna add another script, and I'm gonna call it hand, which I haven't made already. No. Hand. Luckily, we have two of them. I'm just gonna add hand to. Oh, stop that. Only to the right one for now. And what this will do is, as soon as I release my trigger, spawn a grabbable object and throw it. Later on, I will make sure that we can pick it up from somewhere, but now I just want to be able to see if throwing feels kind of natural. And I can do this in several ways. I can just get the input here as well, as I'm doing an XR trackable, similar to that. You get the input from a specific hand. Or I'm going to use XR tracking to get the input for me and notify me when anything of interest happens. And I think I'm going to go with that last option. But first, this is going to get a start method. This is going to get a reference to the XR trackable. Is there a new auto-completing item? No, auto-completed. Oh, that's neat. That's a nice way of configuring your application. If you can't tell, I've just updated JetBrains 25 minutes ago. Because there was a new edition, which is always a bit of a risk. Get component, XR trackable, which should be on the same hand. If it's on the right hand. Yep, it's on there. And there's a really neat thing you can do in Unity. You can require a component. So if you said this hand needs an XR trackable component, you can require component type of XR trackable. Yeah, like that. Trackable. And basically what it'll do is that if you add a hand component to anything, I'll show you by adding one to the light here. It will also automatically add the XR trackable component, because this one requires this component to be there. Now, I have to remove them in order, because otherwise it will give me an error. So now I don't have to check if it's there, because it's required. It makes 100% sure that it's there by adding this little line here. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit. Oh, hi Devin. Button how? Because we're kind of making a pressable button. I've used a custom Unity joint for that allows me to push the button further as collisions have priority over joint limits. Oh, interesting. So you want to do a button that is actually pressable by lowering your hand or finger or something on it, right? Interesting. In my application, what I did was I didn't use collisions because I usually don't use collisions for all of that stuff. I did use a trigger. What I did was as soon as there was a little box collider around the button, the part that was pressable, the red button, and when I entered it, I just tracked the Y position of the controller, and the lower it got, the button would just move with the controller. All right. Yeah, and it looks the same without using any actual collider, but you'll have to keep track of the Y. No, wait, Z. This is Unity, right? So it's Y. Yeah, track of the Y, and if it's under a certain threshold, you click it, I guess. What kind of method did you use for your lever? And I'm glad to be a rubber duck, I guess. Really tough joints that hold the collider in place that can be pushed and grabbed. Okay. I guess that would feel, I don't know, obviously there's no actual feedback, but it would make it seem quite realistic if you do this correctly. Because that's how a real button slash lever works, I guess. But I prefer to do all these things in code. Well, as in, I don't want to use physics when they're not required. So, but I think both ways are valid. Both could be acceptable. Especially, yours is way more configurable, that's for sure. The other one, you'll have to change your programming. What was I doing? Oh yeah. Getting a reference to Trackable. Now. Levers are evil. I've made some levers in Unreal for a VR game. And we simply put a trigger around the lever itself, and when entered, it just snaps to whatever X and Y position it can get closest to. It just doesn't move to the side, because then it would flip over, but you pull it like this, so it would just move with your hand as long as you were close enough to it. It's all very simple, I think, in simplistic terms. Maybe for the lever and garble, I would snap back to place when released. That could work. If I understand correctly, that could work very well. It all has to look good and I guess feel good when using it. Like, feel like how the physical object would function. Other than that, it doesn't really matter much. Now, I'm gonna do something that a lot of you might think. And I think, let's see, yes, there's an auto generate for this in Rider. Just gonna call it this. So, I've made a getter and a setter method. I'm gonna remove the setter method and just leave the getter method, which probably means that I can shorten this to express body, like this. So, the underscore velocity variable property is still private, and that's the one I'll be using in update, but you can access it from the outside, like through the XR trackable component, like this, through the normal velocity thing. You can get it, but you cannot set it. That means that if I can find my hand, which sounds weird, trackable.velocity, I can't do this, is new vector 3. That doesn't work, because I'm not allowed to set a new value there. But I am allowed to retrieve it, to read it. So, vector 3, free, current velocity equals trackable.velocity. You are allowed to read it, but not allowed to write it. Which is good, I think. I will make sure that the trackable keeps track of the velocity, and then the hand, whoops, needs to release something that I actually throw. Oh, I'm using an Oculus right now. I didn't know the haptic feedback was this complex. If by audio you mean you can make it like bzz to the beat. I guess they have some pretty intense feedback. Like, they're pretty configurable. I just haven't used them properly. The 5 had really good ones too, but the 5 modes are just huge. A little bit cumbersome. Though I think they have new ones now, the Knuckles, which are similar to the Oculus controllers. Unfortunately, not much else has been changed for the better in the last 3 years or so. Not a lot of innovation happening here anymore. That's a little high. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to detect when I release the button. I did something similar in the gun. It's triggered, trigger button, out is triggered. That's fine. I just noticed that it's very sensitive. I don't know if you can tell, but these buttons are all tiny little touch screens as well. So if you just touch them, you don't press them, but if you just touch them, that counts as triggering. So I want to do a little bit more I wanted to add a little bit more nuance. If you just touch a gun trigger, it doesn't fire it. I hope. Well, sometime. So I want it to be a little bit more nuanced. And the XR trackable right here. After updating the precision. Whoops. What was input device again? Input device. Oh no, I have to make a start method. Yes, thank you, autocomplete. Input device underscore input device equals null. Let's go there. And these need to go all the way to the top. There. Literally any audio clip. I'm going to try that and see if it's actually recognizable. Or if it's just like weird, semi-random rumbling. So, I used the Oculus SDK for the original Game Jam game, and I hated it. First of all, it didn't work in time for the Game Jam, so I had to download an older version of Unity. Where do I get the input device? I had to download an older version of Unity, and only then could I download an older version of the SDK that worked kinda, but not great. Oh wait, it's not just like this. Yeah, can't set it to no. Actually, we'll just have this be the same node that we're already tracking for the local position and rotation. But I hated the Unity SDK. The Oculus SDK for Unity. I guess it probably has better hardware support. But I read like a giant blog post from Unity about their XR being improved now so much. So I'm gonna try to use XR until I can't. Basically. So all of this input tracking and such is all from XR, which means that it should work on the Vive as well as the Oculus Go and some other, I guess the PlayStation VR as well, instead of just on the Oculus. But I'm assuming I'll run into a point where I want some features that I can't get, like maybe having some haptic feedback that is actually good. But I guess they're working on it apparently. Let me check real quick how I can get the trigger value, because now Common uses this trigger button, but I want to get an axis, as in how far is the trigger pressed. And if you've done something with a controller, you'll realize that the joysticks, for example, they have semi-analog values between -1 and 1, and I think the trigger has between 0 and 1. 1 being fully pressed, 0 being fully depressed, like me. No. Let's see. Unity XR input trigger axis. Do a quick little Google. Let's see. Trigger axis, legacy input, trigger. Oh gosh. They haven't updated these documents in a while. Yes, I got that. Guess you guys can't see what I'm looking at. I can keep it in front of the Unity window, but I don't think that does anything. Input features, yes. Primary buttons, no, just axis. Just yummy. Unity defines a trigger feature used as a single access input. Sure. Let me just see if the autocomplete can help me out here. Input device that try get feature value. Oh, haptic capabilities. Hey, that might be good enough for the thing that I'll need. Aha, float usage. Common usages trigger state. Trigger. That's the only one that has a float in it. Alright, this is just a total guess, it might not work. Float, trigger value, out it. So if it can, it'll display it hopefully. Debug the log. I'm just gonna output it to the console, see if it actually shows up. What's the warning here? Oh, you did not know you can do it like this? Cool. Thanks, Ryder, for teaching me C#. Alright. Well, there goes the ball. So that's still working. So it says 0. Oh boy, outputs really rapidly. And it seems to be using the wrong trigger. So if I clear and collapse this, 59.04E07, that is basically 0. That's as close to 0 as it can get, but that's a floating error. But if I start pressing this, you can see it goes to 1, and then when I release it, it goes back to 0. But this is the left joystick, and I'm pretty sure I added it to the right one. Did I? Did I add it to the right one? I did. Okay, so it's not me. Oh wait, no, I added it to both. Because I'm doing it in the trigger. Whoops. Still, why is it only working in one? No, it's working in both. Or at least working this one. Well, it's working in this one. Nice. Okay, cool. First try. Oh, a memory leak? No, I have not run into that yet. But I have 32 gigs of RAM, so hopefully I won't run into it soon. But I might actually have that memory leak. Is it in the Oculus SDK or in just Unity in general? I did run into another bug in Unity. I forgot the one. It was actually pretty severe 2 weeks ago. I think they patched it out now. This is 2019.1.3 F1. And I think I was using one version before this, which had a pretty massive bug in it. And that's probably the first real bug I ran into. Here's RAM and VRAM. Well, I'm running a GTX 1080 with 8 gigs? 16 gigs? Actually, I don't have 32 gigs either. Not on this. I do on my laptop. Let me check my computer. This PC. I didn't use Windows in so long. Just want to see which hardware I have. Device Manager, there it is. Display adapters. GTX 1080 does not say how many gigs. Great. I'm guessing NVIDIA will show me the highly invasive software they have. Probably has all the information I need. If my VRAM would fill up, I would probably notice in like an hour or so. Yeah, it just says GeForce 1080. Great. First of all, PC hardware. Don't get me started on the birds. Which are quiet now because I bought them some toys. They are softly chirping to each other, but they're also very warm. So I guess they're just chilling. They might flare up later when the thunder comes back in. This is actually good, trigger value. I'll be using this. Because first let's clean this up a little bit. I like to put public stuff or private stuff. No, public stuff first, then private stuff. And the rest is actually basically always in alphabetical order. By the way, that's how I organize all my classes. I used to have all these systems of what's important should come first and such, and I dropped all of them because this is just so much easier. And it's convenient enough that I can go through it quickly. But anyway, this trigger value, this could be important. Instead of having you just lightly look at the button and triggering it, maybe it's better if it's pressed for like 50% or so. Usually after an hour or two it starts crashing. Dang. That is not good. I am using OpenVR instead of the Oculus thingy right now, which I think, not 100% sure how I configured it now, but it generates a texture in front of the screen and basically renders to that. I'm not exactly sure if that's where the memory leak is or if it's just in the renderer in general. Seems like a pretty big oversight. Usually a company has like some form of quality assurance to make sure that stuff like that doesn't slip through. But oh well. This is triggered variable, not just for feminist anymore. I'm gonna use that. By default it's false if trigger value is larger than 0.5. So if it's more than half pressed, the is triggered is true and trigger is pressed. I'm gonna do something here. So only if not is triggered. So if it's false and the trigger value is more than 0.5, it becomes true. Else if it is true and the trigger value is less than 0.5, not less than or equal to, because then there would be a tiny overlap, the is triggered is false again. So this would mean it would only switch on the point that you half press it. I'm just gonna log it here. Trigger. The joint idea for the button works absolutely perfectly. Nice. It's 8:30 though. Should you still be working on your school projects? Shouldn't you enjoy your tiny vacation? He says while working on project. Bert, go back to playing with your stuff. Good. Sweet. Trigger should trigger only if I press the button more than halfway in. Is this right? No. Right one. Can see it on screen, kinda. Nothing, 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 nothing. Triggered. Released. Triggered. 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 Good. Good, 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 good. I'll be wanting to use the opposite of this because I want to know when it's released, but for now, this is fine. Now, I'm going to do something that I'm a big fan of, and some of my colleagues are not, but I'm a huge fan of this. First, we got to use the system. Not unlike Rage Against the Machine. Then, we're going to declare a public event action trigger pressed. What's it again? Untrigger down is probably better. Untrigger down. And I'm gonna make this into an empty delegate. I'll show you later what this means. Untrigger down and untrigger up. Not if, up. Now actions are very lovely, I think. They're a way for you to communicate with other components relatively easily. So when this happens, untrigger down, we can just call this event by pretending it's a method. Ballad of the Birds. And untrigger up similarly. They're both events, but you can call them like they're a method. Now the cool part is, in hand I think, I have the trackable here, they're available now on trigger down and on trigger up. And you can hook into them very easily. Well, you can't see my autocomplete, but there's 3 different ways basically. The easiest is to make a inline thingy here. Log, hey, the hand triggered. And basically what's happening here, this looks like gibberish maybe a little bit, but is when the untrigger down method gets called in trackable, so here, this part, this little piece of code here is executed as well. So if I were to run this, triggered. Wrong hand. Or none at all. Oh wait. Crap. I think I have to be wearing the headset when it starts. Otherwise it doesn't do crap. This can go over here. This can go away. This can go away. This can go away. Let me just see if it's triggering at all. Trigger. There are better ways of debugging your code, but I just like to put messages everywhere to myself. Nothing. That's so funny because it worked like 10 seconds ago. Alright. It has a little sensor in it that detects if you're wearing it on your head or not. Or at least if there's something in front of it. Camera's moving. Yeah, now it works. Triggered. Hey, the hand is triggered as well. Good. So I guess I'll be sitting like this for a long time. Which will weigh heavy at some point. But this is perfect. On trigger down. This is one way to do it. This is called an inline block of code. It's not the most neat way of doing it. You can also do it in a different way. And that is basically creating a new method. In my case, I like to call it onTrackable trigger down. Like on, always starts with on, then the name of the component, then the name of the event. So you're basically saying, hey, call this private method when onTrigger down is triggered. The event is called. But come to think of it, I don't want onTrigger down, I want onTrigger up when I release it. So I have to change this. Because you're throwing something, and you don't throw something by holding on to it. Debug.log. Up. Ooh, up. Fine. See if this works. Once it plays. Triggered. Ooh, up. Yep. Fine. Perfect. So when this happens, I'm going to first grab this projectile right here. Make sure it starts at 0, 0, 0. Save the projectile again. Ah, almost a 0. Then I guess I'll remove it from the world. I'll add it as a prefab here. Serialized field private game object prefab projectile. Null by default. And here I'll instantiate it. Prefab projectile. And I'll instantiate it on my own position, I guess. Transform this position. Transform dot rotation as well. I don't know if this matters much. I'll try. And then this will basically make a copy of this object. I'll just retrieve the component that makes it a projectile, which I think I forgot what I called it. Grabbable. Like that. Grabbable equals instantiate this blank object and retrieving the grabbable component from it. Seems like a long thingy to do, but it seems long because I've zoomed in quite a bit. Then we have the grabbable component from the projectile, and I think I've added a throw method here. And I will throw it with the velocity of the trackable. Nice. It's all coming together. Typo in identify grabbable. I don't think I asked you a thing about typos, Ryder. Why is Ryder suggesting this? Yes, why is Ryder suggesting this? Also, this is how you spell it according to Google, which is basically a dictionary. What's the reason I don't like using delegates, but you do? Bring your birds to the lecture. Yeah, they'll love it. They're sitting on their little porch right now, looking outside. But I don't think they'll like going outside. Very sociable. Well, the reason I like using delegates is for stuff like this. It's a very convenient way to link components together. So you can still separate the functionality, but you can also have them handle stuff in other components. So like when something significant happens in one component, you want that to happen, you want it to trigger something in another component. And events are literally made for that. You can also pass variables along with them. And another cool thing is, you can hook into them in several classes at the same time. So I'm hooking at them now right here in hand on trigger up. But I can just copy this and it will be valid. Right now, if on trigger up is called, it will actually be called 5 times in a row. You can hang multiple thingies in, multiple callbacks into it. Of course, you usually don't do that within the same class, but from other classes you could definitely do that. Some of my colleagues don't like this because it's also a way of programming that's not super object oriented. It's based semi on model view observer, or like the observer pattern. At least that's how I use it. But it's not easy. It is a pretty difficult thing to keep track of. This only really works if you make sure that all your components are standalone in their functionality. Like the hand just does this. Whenever this is called, it just grabs a grabbable, it makes grabbable and throws it. The trackable just does its own thing, just updates the current position and rotation, and lets others know when the trigger is being pulled. Other than that, it shouldn't do anything. So by that you can, through the communication through actions and events, you can have some really neat interactions. If you look at Breath of the Wild again, which I love using as an example, you have an arrow, and if that arrow is made of wood and it passes through fire, the wood catches fire. If your arrow is made of steel, it won't catch fire. If your bow is made of wood, though, it will catch fire. And the bow has probably a component that determines its material. And the material in this case is wood. And wood reacts to fire. So all they have to do in that game is just say, like, this is made of wood, this is made of steel or iron or whatever. Or they have a flammable component or something like that. And have them communicate with each other. Like, well, I'm catching fire. But, for example, if an arrow catches fire, it doesn't get immediately destroyed. Just the tip catches fire at first. And when you shoot it, it does extra damage. Or if you shoot it at a barrel, the barrel will catch fire. I know one of the persons watching right now is playing through Breath of the Wild, so here's some free tips for you. But the point is, they're all functioning by themselves, and you get some really cool interactions because of that, without necessarily programming them in. The components just are reacting off of each other, which allows for some really neat experimentation. But it is pretty complex. You have to have a pretty firm grasp on what your game is going to be like before you can start building all of these components and having them interact together. Yeah. I think we're gonna go to sleep soon, because the sun will set. Oh no, the sun will set in an hour. No, they're not gonna sleep soon. I'm gonna make one little change here in the trackable. I'm going to make the amount of trigger press required for it to be triggered a variable. Private floats. What's it called again? A threshold. Trigger threshold. By default, it's 0.5. Larger than or equal to the threshold, or smaller than the threshold. So I can experiment with this later, what feels like you're actually releasing it. So I want to basically mimic the sensation of throwing a paper airplane. So you can do that like this with just 2 fingers. And the amount that you have to release it, I guess, determines if it feels natural or not. I'll play with that a little bit later on. Now my hand on trigger up should generate a new grabbable and actually throw it in the world. Alright, let's see if that works. And it's only the right hand, I think. So this one. I'm not sure if it's triggering. Oh wait. Ooh, rookie mistake. Variable projectile, prefab projectile has not been assigned. Yep, I forgot to do that. Right hand. It has right hand. Has the projectile. Oh, it's still set to none, so you get an error. I just got to drag this projectile up on here. Try again. Rookie mistake. Can happen to anybody. Whoops. Well, doesn't seem to be a lot of force behind these things. Oh, that makes sense, because I am not updating the velocity yet. It's still just 0. So as soon as I release it, it's just gone. Right hand doesn't have a collider, right? Good. So it's not colliding. Yeah, well, my bad. Clear this. My bad. First I gotta update the velocity accordingly. And it's going to be... I guess at start. We need at least to keep track of the previous position. Which I guess can just be a vector 3. Previous local position. Vector 3, 0. On starts, we'll just set it to the local position. This one we get from the node. So the first time it won't be completely out of whack. And then in the update, velocity equals the current position, which is transform.local position, minus the previous position. So where I am now minus the previous one, the difference between that should be, yeah, that is the amount of delta. Minus local position. Why doesn't it work? Oh, wait. Underscore velocity. Get the velocity this frame. And then previous position, previous local position, we'll just set to our current local position, which has been updated here. Yeah, I think that's it. Now there's one optimization you can make. Introduce this into a variable. Not like that. Introduce this as a variable. Repeated access of property on building component is inefficient. Yeah, that's true. The more you like transform.local position isn't super fast. I think if we go to the decompiled version, yes, you're not allowed to do this. But if you go to the decompiled version, you can see that it's actually a calculation here. The local position is a public getter here. Gets the local position injected. So it's not 100% just a variable like this vector right here. It's more like this velocity right here, but including a calculation. So that makes it slow on repeated access. However, screw it for now. Get velocity of this frame. I think that's all we need to do. I do think it might be in the opposite direction of where we're actually throwing, but we'll see. Wrong control. This one? Yeah. Well, I can drop balls, no problem. Nah, doesn't seem to work. Oh, still a null reference. Vector 3 velocity is null. It's null? Oh, wait. See this rigid body. Add force velocity, force my velocity change. Did I forget to grab a grabbable? Trackable seems fine. Alright, let's debug. Debug that log. First of all, I'm gonna add a assertion here. Is not null. And what this does, basically assert that is not null. Make sure it's the Unity assert, by the way, Unity engine dot assertions. The NUnit one probably gives you some errors. Basically, this crashes your game if something is not. Like, if this is not null, then it's fine. But if it is null, it will throw an error just to alert me that it is actually null. Also here, assert that is not null. The trackable, and I guess we'll just log trackable.velocity. See what that is. Listen. Alright, this seems all fine. There's null references from somewhere else. Rigid body. Did I forget to add a rigid body? Get the point of rigid body. Did I forget to do that? No. I know what the mistake is. So, rookie mistake. I've been working with Unreal a little bit too long. I can remove this again. I think I figured it out. So, when you instantiate an object like this, you can grab the component. Fine, this is fine. This will grab this component. However, a only after this method has finished will start be called on this object, because that will only be called on an object after it's been in the game. So after it's been put in the game. And technically, right here, it hasn't been put in the game yet. I guess that's in the next update loop. So start has not been called. But there's another method called awake that is called before start, which is called at the point of creation of the object, I think. The actual definition might be a bit different, but for our purposes, I think that's it. Rookie mistake. One of several. And I hope that's it. Alright, let's see. Well, at least they're moving a little bit. And no errors, so that's good. Just to see if this works. Use local position. I'm gonna keep logging the velocity to see, because I think it's going to be very, very small. Because I don't know how many times the update function actually is called. Wait, let me check the. I don't know if I can just open the stats while it's running. Stats 115-ish FPS. Alright, you can see the output here. Clear. When it's not moving at 0, when you are moving it around, it should be non-zero. I guess they round it out. Yeah, unless you move it really fast, you won't be able to see it. They'll round it to 1 decimal, I guess. But this does seem to be working. But this is very, very slow. 0.1. That is very slow. That means 10 centimeters per second, which will be overtaken by gravity really quickly. So what I'm going to do right here is just multiply it by 100 and see if that shows up better. So instead of 10 centimeters a second, it'll be, I guess, 10 meters a second. Better. It is coming out of my at the bottom for some reason. Yeah, but I am throwing them. Can't really aim them. Can also throw them the other way. Oh wow. That was a pretty big glitch. So actually times 100 is not even close to being realistic. I'm throwing them way harder. Alright, so I guess times 800? That might be a little much. 80 meters per second. Still, it has to feel good. It doesn't have to be realistic, I guess. Well, okay. That might be a little bit over the top. Does make it a lot easier. Tink. Nice. If this were basketball, I'd be killing it. Tink. This actually works better than I expected. But that is obviously too much. Tink. Does seem to work quite nicely, but it's not easy to aim. If you just move it in front of you. I don't know if you guys can see. It's just flying out every which way. Boy, that's a lot of projectiles. I should probably have them destroy themselves after a while. Direct position per frame rather than fixed update, which makes sense, but fixed update for velocity is necessary. However, it would be necessary, but it's actually not. Because, before I say something stupid, let me think about this. Because I'm just setting the velocity once. It's not actually an update method. In any update method, it's just being triggered once. The velocity is just set on throw, which is a velocity change. So it literally sets the current rigid body's velocity to that. If you were to multiply this by delta time, It doesn't do anything. Not in this case, at least. So what it basically does is, I think, is it sets rigid body dot velocity to velocity. I think this is the same thing. I'm not 100% sure. Let's see what the engine says. The engine says, "Don't decompile me." Okay, but I think this is the same thing. You set the current velocity, which just means that whatever the next frame is, it'll be executed. Because the velocity is the thing that gets updated by the physics engine. Oh, that is actually correct. That is actually correct. I forgot about that. The way I calculate my velocity is not correct. You're right. This should be multiplied by delta time. So what I'm calculating right now is the amount of distance covered between frames, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Time dot delta time. Oh man, it's even slower then, isn't it? Yep. But it does work, but it's very slow. Wait, I'm multiplying it by delta. I should divide it to delta time. Get the velocity. Hang on, I gotta do some head math, which is fine because I'm really tired. You get the current position minus the previous position. Yeah, that's fine. Then you have the distance that you've covered within that frame. So you have to divide it, not multiply it, by the time that is between the frames. That actually makes it bigger. So then you convert it from frames to, I guess, meters. So now I'm gonna guess it's gonna go pretty fast. Oh yeah, in fact they're going so fast I can't see them. Oh, it actually does detect a collision. Yeah, so now it's going at 800 meters per second, so I'm just gonna... That's half the speed of sound or something. So I guess I can just remove this again. That's what I get for doing 3 things at the same time. I had a discussion with one of the teachers about this, like programming what people are watching. Yeah, this feels more realistic. This actually feels pretty realistic. Yeah. I'm just gonna add a floor later on because they're all falling away from me. I don't know if you people listen to Korn. Yeah. Oh yeah, it doesn't matter how you hold the controller. It just matters about the motion that you make. Yeah. I feel weak. Dink. Nah. Current velocity is in meters per second, divided by that. Yeah, you're making it. Yeah, thanks. I should have read the comments. Yeah, divided by delta time. Should have read the comments. Too bad this 165 hertz screen is slightly too low res to also keep the fucking comments on at the same time. I should probably pop this. I don't know if I can pop it out from OBS. I should probably. I have some space left. Yeah, that would have saved me a little bit of a headache. So this is semi-realistic. However, I think the projectile now weighs 1, which I think is just 1 kilo. Which is pretty heavy. Which means that, I guess, it takes a lot of velocity to throw it. I don't think a sphere of 1x1 should weigh that. Should weigh more like 300 grams or something. 0.314 or 0.6. I forgot. Let's just assume this. Make it a little bit lighter. However, instead of finicking with that, Yeah, this does work a little. Yeah. Yeah. Now it takes less velocity to throw, but doesn't help much. 1 kilogram of feathers versus 1 kilogram of hammers. Still weighs the same. Still falls the same. There they go. Alright, first I'm gonna add a floor. Because I feel like I'm floating in the air every time I look down. I'm gonna add a cube. And scale the heck out of it. 10 meters. Nope, not 10 meters high. 10 centimeters high is fine. And 10 meters long. And then I guess moving down a little bit. This doesn't seem like the ideal height for a floor. Nah, it's more like a ceiling. Not sure why that happens. Did I change my spawn point or something, player? No, 0, 0, 0. Head. I should probably figure out how to track the surrounding space. Sure, Devin, I'm sure you run into it. 165, no, 156. Damn it, I always get that wrong. 156 hertz. Oh yeah, that's true. You can create virtual desktops in your Oculus. Not great for text, but fine for whatever else. And nobody can see what I see. I can't wait for the new headsets that have like the 4K resolution, and then having to buy a whole new computer because this one will probably not be able to keep up with it. But if they have like high resolutions, you can basically make an entire wall into a screen, like 6K or something easily. Virtual 6K then. I mean, that would be really cool. Some friends of mine have been doing that since the DK2, which did not have a high resolution, like 720p, which is not high. Go down. Go down a little further. About 1.8 meters down. Which is pretty much 1.9. That's my height. So now it feels like my feet are on the floor because I'm sitting down, and it actually tracks my upward movements as well. Alright, that's actually pretty realistic. And what I can do here is copy this and paste it, and then remove this one and call this one floor. So copying it while it's in play mode, it's a little hack that you'll learn over the years, because then you forget sometimes that you're in play mode, and hopefully you'll find out before you stop it. I'm going to create a new material for the floor and make it green or something nice and calming. Bright fucking green. More like this. Semi-grass green. Right, let's see how my my balls handle this grass. Great. It just gets stuck. Did I roll? Not really. Just because I turned off the rotations. Yeah, that's probably because I turned off the rotations. They just gather in a tiny little pile. Let's see. Some stuff that I have to do. First off, this velocity, I'm probably gonna just multiply it a few times, so you don't have to actually throw it, because I've seen people almost throw these controllers. That's why these little straps are here. People keep throwing shit. You saw it with the original Wii as well. Then I guess I can base it on the weight of the object, which makes it configurable for different objects that you can throw later on. But for now, projects, prefabs, projectile, freeze rotation. Nah, that's okay. Don't freeze rotation. And no, just do. No, dynamic is actually fine. I'm not 100% sure what the difference is between continuous and continuous dynamic. Maybe I should turn off the drag as well. Oh, there it goes. Tink. Kind of slow down after a little bit. But this is more realistic. Not much more, but more. And like this, Jeu de Boule is created. I guess I could now make a golf game. But instead of, they don't stop. That's kind of odd. They slow down and then they kind of just stop. It's because they don't have any drag. Give them a little bit of drag. That's too little. Drag basically means slowing down velocity when in contact, I guess. Well, still keep going. They're slowing down, but What is this bright on the eyes, by the way? It's green. Right. Can't hit shit. Now, gonna do something radical. Instead of using gravity on this rigid body, just gonna make this all as close to zero as possible. I want it to float. Do I have my paper plane mesh? Planet, far plane, no. Let me check. I think I have a mesh somewhere. Otherwise, I guess I'll have to quickly make one. Assets. Models. Create new folder. Meshes. Airplane. Show this. Yeah, nice. Airplane. I'm gonna do the same thing that Unreal does and call this an SM_airplane. SM meaning static mesh. The mesh filter is going to be that airplane. Oh wait, actually. This one? What? It's tiny. Oh wait, it's still scaled down. 111. I think this is fine. This is about the size of a real paper airplane. See how that looks? Oh boy, look at it go. Well, oh yeah, I turned off the gravity. It is rotated weird. I have to throw it like this. Because I guess the top is forward. That one's rotating out of control. I guess you can do this. Makes it a lot easier to aim this way. If there's no gravity. I guess there's still a sphere around them, so if they hit the floor, they just start rolling. You can bump them into each other. This is somewhat what a paper airplane does, though. Not as much as this. And I should probably rotate it, the mesh at least. Probably make the sphere a little smaller as well. This could be an art installation in and of itself. Just fill this up with paper airplanes just floating around. Almost creepy. Oh, that's my other hand, I guess. Anyway. I can just shoot them by pushing them into each other. Boom! I scored. Unity's surprisingly good with performance if the objects are all far apart. Well, there rolls my paper airplane. Right. So it needs to be thrown. Drag is air, drag only. You have no rolling resistance. That's true. And I don't think I'm using any of the physics materials yet. I got a script that saves play mode changes if you want. That is a lifesaver. That sounds really awesome. Did you make that script or did you find it online somewhere? Because I feel like controllers have been thrown through monitors because of people forgetting to save. So this turned into a stream where students watch their teachers play with his balls. Shit. No. That'd be inappropriate. This is not this kind of campsite. It's a slightly different type of campsite. Alright, first things first. This projectile, I'm going to want to rotate the objects 90 degrees forwards. Like this. Because I feel like holding it like this and throwing it is a more natural motion. I think I did something similar in the Game Jam version. But I don't want to rotate the entire object. I just want to rotate the model. So I'm going to add another object and call this the mesh. Add a mesh renderer here and a mesh filter. Mesh filter first. Oh, I guess it doesn't matter. Add this little thingy there and remove the mesh from the other one. You can see it's all neat and unlit and purple pink. That's because there's no material attached to it yet. 0 materials. And I guess this is a good time to make a material for the plane. Well, not material, airplane. Which could be heavenly blue-ish. For now. They're probably going to be mostly white later on, but because they're paper. There we go. Blue. A little bit too dark. This is important. Lighten it up a little bit. Might also be the ugly light hitting it. Did I forget to rotate it? I think I forgot to rotate it. So this mesh, because it's a child object, it will rotate, but it doesn't do anything with the rest of the 90 degrees. That way. Facing down. Sure, whatever. Alright, let's see. Yeah, that's more like it. Now they feel more like you're actually throwing them like this, you're holding them and throwing them. And there they go. Cool. Oh, wait, no. I guess I could... I forgot we had an entire house already. Including materials and everything. How big is it? Oh, it's pretty big. Oh, this is just... Oh, this is not our house. This is one of the houses on the street, I think. By the way, props to our 3D artist who made like a load of these houses in like 6 hours or so. Go away. Not this one. I guess the player house was only our room or something. I forget. And it didn't have a roof initially. The roof was added in later. Yeah, this is it. It's been a while. So the game's playing from here, basically. You're throwing your paper planes out of the window. That's it. And there's also a loose window for us to open and close. I think that's it, yeah. Do remember it having a roof, though. Maybe this one? This one? No, both. Neither of them have a roof. Oh well. I'm not of the decorative kind. I didn't have that many Oh no, actually we do have a lot of props. But for now, I guess I'll only be using the airplane. Right. So, no gravity is probably a little bit not enough gravity. It does require some. Let's see. And you can adjust the gravity for every object in the scene, but I don't like that. Basically, gravity by default is 9.1 units per second squared, which is exactly the same as in the real world, except for units, it's meters. But I think you can scale gravity. Oh, only in 2D. Never mind. Yeah, I remember using gravity scale, but I guess that's only in 2D objects. But that's okay. We can make our own gravity. We don't need this. Switching between Unreal and Unity all the time, like several times within a week, is not recommended. It's too much. This is grabbable. That's fine. That's fine. We'll rename it to something else later. But this airplane, the prefab, the projectile. I'm going to create a projectile game object. But first, should I do something special for airplanes? I am going to do something. So these airplanes are floaty. So, first I'm going to create a gravitable component, which will apply R gravity, but only to this specific element it's attached to. It's actually going to be a very simple component. Very simple. Similar to the one I did in class. Private rigid body underscore rigid body. Null by default. It's gonna require a component type of rigid body. There. Oh, oops. I don't know why there's so many parentheses. Right. So I don't have to check if it's actually there. Then in the start, I guess we'll retrieve it in the awake. Awake. That's component rigid body. And in the fixed update, as mentioned earlier and during the lectures, no, fixed update. I don't know why the autocomplete is not creating this function for me. I have to type it out like a plebeian. Let's see, fixed update. What we're going to do is we're going to apply our own gravity with blackjack and hookers. Add force vector 3 dot down times 9.81. This is normal gravity. So I'll add a variable here, serialized field, private float gravitational force. By default, normal gravity, I guess. And I'm going to add this component to the projectile. Gravitable. So notice that gravity here is turned off in the use gravity, but it should still fall. No, I'm not actually sure. Nope, wrong controller. Can't see where the other one is. Yep, there it goes. Still has the giant sphere collider around it, which looks a bit weird, but at least gravity is being applied correctly. They're even landing on top of their invisible spheres. Good. And now, I'm going to lessen this significantly. I'm going to divide it by 8. You can actually do that. You can just put small calculations in the editor and it will calculate it for you. So now gravity is a lot less. Nice. This makes a lot more sense. This feels a lot more like a paper airplane, really. Still goes down, but not nearly as fast. Now, what I'm going to do later, but as soon as I figure out a nice way to do that, is have the gravity be dependent on the speed, forward speed. So, because like a real airplane, the faster it goes, the more lift it generates, so that it will, if it goes too fast, it will actually go upwards. And paper airplanes basically do the same thing. Not as well as a real airplane. Wow, 2 balls on top of each other. Oh, there it goes. I've already done something like this in Unreal, because also the way in these types of paper airplanes, the way the power is applied is slightly different than just generating lift. It won't go like upwards immediately. It will try to go upwards at the front. So when it actually flies by, it does this. Because it generates speed when it goes down, and then it goes up a little bit, and it will flip down and it will generate speed again, and it will go down and generate speed again. So it'll do a bit like this. You'll see crappy paper airplanes do that all the time. I'm not sure if that's actually going to be fun though, because that's the main point of this game, not necessarily paper airplane simulator. Yeah. Nice. But more or less, it's going to be a wacky, fun little VR game that will like last like an hour or so to get through, or if you're really good, 20 minutes or so. But with bonus challenges and whatnot. I think I'll do that later though. I had something working like this in Unreal with add force, add position, so I guess I could do this with this one as well. For now, gravity just pulls down in the center of the object with whatever gravitational force it has. And what's the opposite of gravitable? Liftable, I guess. Hello, Raging Ram 2. This works pretty nicely though. You can throw them now. They'll still rotate. I guess I'll remove the sphere collider and replace it with something more close to what it actually is. The box collider? It's a huge box collider. Let's make it kind of fit. I'll generate one that actually fits later on, but for now I'll just approximate it. Damn it. Oh, that's the top one. This one. Turn the perspective off. You can do that by clicking this little thingy under the compass. Helps a lot with these kind of things. It's not very precise. It doesn't have to be. Rotate it. Nice. Neat little box. And you can see it's pretty close to the center. You can probably reset this a little bit. Drag this boy down. Oh, the lights in my living room are turning on. That means that the sun's going down soon. It's also probably why the birds are quiet. Neat. This fits quite nicely, I think. Let's see how she flows. I guess they won't roll around anymore. Which is a shame, of course, but they'll just land on the floor. Ding. But it does, it's a lot more accurate, like of an approximation to what these objects actually look like. I spawn a whole lot of them. All the way over. Oh boy. Way to get me nauseous. It looks semi-realistic. And I say semi. And throwing them feels pretty good. Just gravity takes hold pretty quickly. So maybe I should reduce the gravity a little bit more, even more than it is now. Though for now this is fine. First get the mechanics working, then tweak them later. I am going to move this grass field a little bit more like this, so I can see where they actually land. Because this field is 10 meters long, and I'm pretty much on the edge right now. So by doing it like this, I can throw them relatively easily 10 meters. That's fine. So you have to be able to throw them across the street, which is, well, the street's like 6 meters, 7 meters, 8 meters, I guess. 10 meters might not be enough. But I guess you can pretty easily throw them further than that as well. Getting pretty hard to aim them though. Nice. You can even hold them sideways. Later on, I guess I'll make them like fly in the direction they're pointing. Oh, is Mark streaming as well? Again? What's his Twitch? Ah, he's offline. Dang it. Too bad. Go in there and mess stuff up. To make them last longer, you could add a positive force upwards that will gradually decrease over time. Yes! Very, very good idea. It's pretty much the same thing as gravity is doing now, except what it's doing now is it'll create a force downwards that increases over time. Instead of the upwards force decreasing over time, the downwards force is increasing over time. As in, well, it's not increasing, it's the same, but the total velocity is increasing. If you were to have a variable, like a downward force that actually increases over time, then you would have more of a curve. It would fly straight and then suddenly kind of drop off, which I guess makes sense. But what I'm planning on doing is have it being totally based on the speed of the projectile, which I can probably now call plane. Airplane. Because like a real plane, it's kind of based on its speed, like how much lift it has. But then I do need to introduce some form of drag so it slows down. Because otherwise it'll just keep going. Which might be fun. What else do we want to do now? There's a few minutes left. Maybe I'll start with the airplane game object. First, let me reorder this to make more sense. Colliders, gravitable. Game objects. Airplane. Because it doesn't have its own component yet. It's just a combination of two other components, the grabbable one and the gravitable one. No? No, no? Yes, there it is. So now I want some airplane specific stuff to happen in it as well. Airplane. What I usually do is I put this class on top, or as high as possible at least, and all my own classes, put them somewhere near the top. There. So I'm going to need access to the rigid body as well, first of all, because I'll be using that to determine my speed. I know I can get it from some other objects, but in this case, start rigid body equals get component rigid body. During the fixed update, will we be applying? Yeah, I'll try it. I'll just try something. I'm gonna include a private void fixed update, and I'll show you two things. First, how to get the speed of your current object, and that you can get that by getting the velocity of your object and then its magnitude. If you're worried about performance, you should get its square magnitude, which is just magnitude squared, because getting the root of something is a very heavy calculation intense way of getting values. But I'm just going to use magnitude because I'm a rebel like that. I can always replace it later on. For example, if you're checking, like, if magnitude is more than 2.0, that means if it's more than 2 meters per second, I guess, yeah, 2 meters per second. You could also get the squared magnitude, but instead of 2, you need to get 2 squared, so 2 times 2, which is 4. Yes, you can tell I studied math at some point, but I'm not going to use this for now. I'm just going to use the actual magnitude, and I guess I'll just have that as a value for the speed and apply that to the rigid body, add force, add position, upwards, factor 3 dot up, times the speed. This might be a little too much if it doesn't slow down, but we'll see. And the position is going to be slightly in front of the object. I'm not 100% sure how large this thing is. 14 by 23, 24 by 6 centimeters. Huh. That is actually pretty accurate to what real lives are like, I guess. So it's 23 centimeters high. So I should just put it like 10 centimeters in front. Position. New factor. Whoops. Factor 3. It's going to be rotated, so it has to be over the z-axis. Yes, I'll just try. Position is 0, 0, 0.12, a little bit in front. Oops. So this should apply force not in the middle, which would let it go up easily like this, but more in the front, which would make it go a little bit like this, depending on how fast it goes. Now, because it doesn't decrease speed at all, it will just start rotating, I think. But let's see if it does. Yep. Oh, there it goes. Oh, and because it's going faster, it's going to go fast. I forgot about that. It's going to keep going faster and faster because it's 100% based on speed. And it's like the opposite of my My plane's falling down. There they go. They're all falling down, but as soon as they're starting to gain speed, oh, I guess they'll find an equilibrium at some point. They'll just fall slowly. But if they have a little bit of speed, they'll already fly off. So yeah, that's not great. So the speed needs to be based on the forward direction. Invalid world ABB. Object is too large or too far away from the origin. Oh! I've never seen this arrow before. But this means that one of the planes basically left orbit. Like it's more than 6,000 units away, so it's over 6 kilometers up in the air. So that's, well, you can comfortably still, no, you can't actually parachute from there, so it's pretty high. This is the first time I've seen this error. The planes just flew out into orbit. This is going to be more important. This has to be 0, 0, 0, because otherwise they'll start misaligning if you apply the force in front. Whoops. So, instead of it having be just the speed, it has to be the speed in the direction you're flying. That's not easy. And it shouldn't always be factor 3 that up. It should be the up of your transform. Because even if you're flying downwards, it will start doing this because the lift is generated under the wings, or over the wings actually, and it will just drag you up like that. So you get like a little bit of this. So it shouldn't just always be up no matter what direction you're pointing. It should be up from wherever you are pointing at that moment, instead of the world up. Better. Starting to look a bit weird, and I guess they flip over at some point and they just keep going backwards. This is very interesting. Well, not exactly what I want. Maybe the lift isn't generated 12 centimeters to the front. Maybe that's way too far. Maybe 5 centimeters is fine. Just keep flipping over. And they keep flipping over so hard that they can't flip back. Well, that didn't do anything. Now they're also going sideways. There they go. Scurrying away. Look like little crabs that are gaining speed every bounce. This makes no sense. Right, this might not be exactly what I'm looking for. So, it is directly based on speed, but it should be a little bit less than just the full-on speed. So I'm just going to multiply this by 0.1, so 10% of your speed gets converted into lift, which I guess makes sense. And to be fair, with real airplanes, I don't think it's actually based on your speed as much. Well, you can see it flop around a little bit more. Oh, I know. Because I'm always applying it at the same point, which doesn't work if you rotate it. So I have to get transform.forward. Is that it? And scale that by this much. So it's always at the front, but not the world front. This probably doesn't return anything. Factor 3. I'm just trying something. I don't think I haven't done this like this in the previous time. The previous one just had very little gravity attached to it. Position. I guess it's just force position. Let's transform it forward. Oops. Scale it like that. The transform.forward is always length 1. Does this actually work? I have no idea. I hope it stops flipping around though. It does not stop flipping around. It is going sideways. Maybe force at position doesn't do what I think it does. I'll have to look into that. But what we can at least do is use the speed in a similar way that Raging Ram sets, and make them ease into the direction they're going. Then make lift based on forward direction. That way they can have typical drop, lift up behavior you see in good paper airplanes. Almost like a... Yes, they're very realistic. Basically what a real plane does. I think add force at position needs a lot of fine tuning. First I'm going to add some drag. Whoops. One might be a little bit much. We'll see. That just means it slows down to 0. Good. Then, this needs to be a little less though. Can I change this on the fly? I can. Good. As long as it slows down over time. Point 1. Then rigid body dot add force transform dot up times speed. Gonna get the same mistake as I got earlier in that, aren't I? It's gonna fly off into space. Actually, I'm just gonna pretend like it doesn't rotate. Factor 3 that up. Speed. And the gravity that it's applied to it, I'm just gonna set it to normal gravity. And have it be countered. Oh, no, 0.91. There we go. And add force upwards based on your current speed, which will be, I'm just going to output this because it should be around 1 or 2 meters per second, which is actually quite a lot, but not as much as gravity. Oh boy, did the game crash? Ah, I just lost tracking. You'll see that it actually goes upward when it has high speed and then starts falling downward relatively quickly as soon as it loses speed. I'm not throwing it upward, it just goes up while it has speed and starts falling down. This is actually quite realistic. Assuming it would point in the direction it's actually going. Which I guess I can make it do. Cool, it even has a little curve. Man, it seems like the speed is about 2 when I throw it, up to 8, 9 when it starts falling. While I'm at it, I might as well transform the forward equals which about it at velocity. I don't know if this actually works. I think you can set the forward. This just means point in the direction you're going. I'm gonna guess that forward is not what I need, but it's actually up. It does point in the direction it's going, and then just kind of stands on its tip. This is some Five Nights at Freddy's stuff. This is a little paper airplane walking by. This is creepy. This is really creepy. There's a bunch of them skittering away in the distance, committing Sudoku. That's real creepy. Alright, just gotta... I'm gonna fix that real quick. It does look like they're dancing. That is exactly right. What Devin's saying about how the lift on a real airplane works, that is exactly right. Can have a rotational. I think it is roll, yaw, pitch. I think. I forget. It has like the thingy. Roll, yaw, and pitch. But I think it has influence on your pitch. So you go like this. I'm not 100% sure if that's actually what it is. It's pretty much what the what Unreal calls it as well. The rotation, roll, yaw, and pitch as well. But we're not going for full realism here. We're just going for something that feels neat. And I guess face the up of your model in the direction. It's so weird. The Oculus has like a home attached to it when it boots up, like a Facebook home. Whoops. Now it's upside down. But it does look pretty nice. It's just going backwards, and then they're flipping the fuck out. So I'm just gonna set it to minus. Yeah, we're all about quick fixes here in this company. There we go. First try. But now it actually points in the direction it's flying, which makes a lot more sense. Yeah. This actually works pretty nicely. You just have to make them stop following the direction they're in as soon as they hit the ground, because then they start doing this little crab thingy and jitter all over the place. Well, you can tell exactly how often the frames get updated for physics. It's pretty slow in comparison, because I can see both at the same time. Tink. It's fine as long as it's moving anywhere, but as soon as it hits something, it starts freaking the flip. That's so creepy. But if you drop them, they'll immediately start pointing downwards. Spawn them all over. But this does feel pretty nice. Semi-realistic. I'll have to play with these values a little bit. But it is pretty easy to hit the target. At least, it's not super hard. It's not as... But it doesn't have to be super easy either. This feels kind of alright, actually. How much time do I have left? 3 minutes. It's not much. But let's see if I can add one more thing. Before I put everything in version control. Oops. Just gonna remove this for now. Not fun. The airplane has a box collider on it. That means... Which is just a collider. That means an on-collision enter can be triggered. Hey, no fighting. Find your own sleeping spot. Which has a bunch of contact points. Alright, first let me do this. I think it's called contact point. Contact points in other dots. Contacts. Guess this has to be for each. Because we're not in C++ anymore. So these are the points of impact, if any. I'm gonna add. I'm gonna do something that some of my colleagues will hate me for. I'm gonna add a public static event action, and I'll pass in a vector 3 on hits. Yeah, that's it. And it's going to be initialized as an empty delegate. Basically, for every contact point, I'll call on hits with the contact point dot point, which is just a vector 3. Wait. So by creating a an action like this, you're basically saying it's going to be whatever is going to hook into this needs to be a function that can receive a vector 3. This is basically the same as private void on hit vector 3 hits, something like this. So the function, there's a function that needs to be able to receive a vector 3 as a parameter. But the cool thing is, and also the ugly thing, is that it's static, meaning that you don't need access to this component to access this onHit delegate, which could be ugly if you abuse it. And I usually do two things. I pass in the objects that created this event and whatever variables I want. So I'm also passing in the object that created it. I'm probably not going to do anything with it for now, but just as an aside. Now I'm going to add a new empty game object, 000. I'm going to call this effects. So I don't have it yet. Usually I add this to the game object, but whatever. I'm going to add a new script, which is neither a component nor a game object. It's a core script. I mean, technically it is a component. Just gonna call it effects. And what this will do, this class will listen, this component will listen to all kinds of cool stuff that's happening in the world and create visual effects for it that don't impact gameplay. They just add something to the visual flair, but they don't impact how the game functions. Like the plane will still fly like this. To show you what I mean, in the awake, I can hook into airplane dots on hit. See that? Notice that I don't need to get the component anywhere because I'm hooking it into the class because it's static, which is oh so ugly if you don't know what you're doing. I'm gonna add a method here on airplane hits, and it's very, very, very important that you also remove this again, because I added here with a plus, but as soon as the game is loading a new level, this does not go away. It's static. That means it stays in memory. So when the level is unloaded, I'll just need to hook myself out of the onHit again when you load in a new level or something. Airplane and impact points. Now what I'm going to do here, serialize field, private, game object, prefab, I'm just going to call it impact. And what I'm going to do here is instantiate the prefab impacts on the impact points. No specific rotation. Quaternion.identity is just normal rotation, upwards in the world. That's it. Now, I'll create a nice little impact object. 000. I'll add a game object impact here. I'm gonna go through this fast because I'm running out of time. Because I actually have I have some work left to do. Yeah, seizing, more like seizuring, because they're flopping all over the place, like fish on dry land. This impact script will do two things. It'll show an impact. In this case, that'll look like a nice little sphere, I think. Yeah. I guess it's easier to just create a sphere and add impact to this instead of the other way around. No collider needed, it's just a visual effect. Gonna make this into a prefab later. Create a new material for it. Impact. Not sure if I have to make it transparent or not. I'll try later. I think this means that I can change the alpha, right? Yeah, it seems like it is. Put it on the impact. That works. Change the alpha down, it'll fade out. Good, good, good. That's exactly what I want. Now, I'm going to do something that you will only see in the later lectures. But, on start. Notice that I've set the scale to 0, 0, 0, meaning it's invisible. It has no dimensions. On start. I'm going to use lean tween if I've included that. I haven't yet. Damn it. Come to think of it, I don't think I've included any of my... Oh no. Oh no. Alright. Not sure if you guys can see this, but I have to do it through source tree. I'll add my own personal library of shitloads of Unity functions that I've built over the years. But it's also got a version of lean tween that I tweaked a little, included. First off, show this. I think I made this into a repository already. And I've made it so that I can add my settings and set and my own stuff as a... That's not it. Oh no, I haven't made this into a repository. Oh, whoa. Oh no, it does have a repository. Well, we'll see. I'll create a new one. I know it's not valid. I want it to. Git bash here. Because you guys can see what I'm doing, but I'm initializing an empty Git repository in my project. I should probably add a nice little Unity git ignore, which by the way, GitHub has a lot of default git ignore files, which are very useful. The Unity one contains like a lot of stuff that you don't want included in your project, all the temporary files and such. Fly My Love, version 2, yes. No remote for now, that's okay. Add this to the git ignore. Okay. You can also start ignoring everything under ID. Sure. Stage all. Initial import. Ouch. Should probably set this up earlier. I didn't think this was going to be the actual release version. I thought I might copy it later. But it seems like this is going to be actually the game that I'll be releasing. Now, add a remote. A sub-repository. I have to get it from a URL. God, Windows. This looks to be going on for a while. I mean, yes, kinda. Because I want to show you something. I love making visual effects, and you can actually do a lot with just scaling, tweening, and I guess fading in this case. I don't know my password. Guess I've never logged in on this computer. Ah, works. Nice. First try. Or Unity version 2. Great name. Development branch. Clone. Copy. Place it in assets plugins. Not sure if I have to make a new directory. Like this. Alright, you should see it show up in Unity as soon as it's done checking it out. There it is. Our Unity. Still empty. Oh, here we go. The cool part about using submodules in Git is you can have this code be completely... Ah, there it is. All my default stuff. Nice. Real nice. I didn't want to include it immediately because it includes a lot of extensions and stuff that I made that basically make programming a lot easier, but I want you to understand it first. Anyway, for now we should be able to use Linktree. Yeah, there it is. So, we start the scaling at 0. We're going to run it at this game object, and we're going to scale it up to 1. And we're going to do this in a very short time because it's basically an explosion. Now I have a bunch of animation durations. Faster. I'm going to do this really fast. And it's an explosion, which means it starts really fast and then it slows down. So it should ease out exponentially, maybe even quart. There we go. Basically this means when the game starts, or when this object is created, show it like this. I'm gonna do something else. Scale, no, not scale, actually. Alpha, this game object to 0. Alpha is the visibility, if you don't know. And do this slightly slower. So it'll scale up and then animation duration fast, but not faster. And we're also going to ease this out, but a little less awkwardly. Then, when this is done, set on complete, callback, destroy. We just destroy ourselves, so there's no garbage left. That's it. This impact object exists to destroy itself. Now, I can run the game, but it will be gone before anything of significance happens. So I guess I'll just make it into a prefab immediately. Impact, which will be an invisible prefab because it's scaled to 0. By the way, how much is this ROM special Unity includes? Actually, I've been using it for a project that I've been doing for a client, and because it's for the EU, basically for a EU grant, it has to be open source. But I said I'm not going to open source my personal library. There's like 3 years of work in there. It took me a long time to do that. And they asked me what would it cost for you to open source it, and I said 10,000. And they were contemplating it. But then they were like, can you not include it? I'm like, yep. They won't be able to compile the code that is based on my libraries, but you will be able to run everything else, just not the special effects and such. Which they were okay with. But I think for 10,000 or so, I would open source my plugins. I'm sure you'll see parts of them fly by at some point. Like, these extensions are super useful. They save so much time in the end. And the thing I always use is a state machine that I built at some point. Plus I've made a lot of sprite animation specific stuff for frame-based sprite animations that I don't like the Unity animator. Plus it's easier to work with certain types of frame sheets with this way. Might be personal preference. So I'm not gonna open source this anytime soon, but I will show you my thinking process and show you what I did to come to all of these neat little things that I can reuse at several points. Right, first the prefab for impact. I'm going to set it here. I think this is everything. Effects spawns a new prefab impact on the point of impact. The airplane on collision enter calls on hit for every point in the collision. I think this could already work. It will just spawn a shitload of explosions as soon as it hits the floor at some point. Man. Yep, there it goes. One of them is fine, but when it starts doing that, all right, that's too much. I'm just gonna airplane on collision enter, hit everything, then destroy yourself. Because otherwise it'll just keep going. So as soon as it bumps into something, it's just gone. It will show a collision. Huh. Apparently friends of mine on Facebook can visit my house. 2 impact points. Boom. So this is, bam, kind of neat. It does show several impact points as well. Like if it hits it full frontal, I guess that it'll have more than 1 impact point. I feel like the explosion is okay if it lingers a little bit longer, but other than that, it looks pretty nice. Scale to factor 1, ease out quartz, really fast. And the fade outs, I'll put that on slow. I like using these variables for this because all my animations feel very much connected if they're all pretty much the same. It should fade out to 0, but I guess it has to do with the material. And you can still see it. It's transparent, I guess opaque. Will look better. Nope, it just disappears. Just looks like 2 giant balls. Once again, fade. I don't know if I can actually change it during the runtime. That's better. That's more like it. So the explosion, actually it does scale up, but it scales up so fast in less than 0.08 of a second. But you can still see it because the Oculus is 90 FPS, I think, something like that, per eye. So you can still see it, like it looks like a very fast explosion. Nice. I'll slow it down a little bit, see if that looks better. If you want to know these values, by the way, the fastest is 0.04 seconds, 0.08, 0.16, 32, and the slowest is 2.65 seconds. You'll notice that these are all duplicates of the first one. And they're all powers of 2 except for the negative one. Yeah, this looks nice. Just crashes on the floor. Or into each other. Oh, I forgot, yes. Whatever it hits, it'll explode. So if 2 of them hit each other, they'll also explode. Boy, this is pretty creepy. Whoa, straight in the middle. Nice. I actually don't like that it shows two explosions at the same time. So I'm going to change it in airplane to just break after the first contact point. That's the easiest way. Otherwise, I can do it like this. There's an uncollision enter, so there is a contact. So I'll just only do the first one. On hits this, the first contact point. That's point. No forward. Just the initial point of impact. So you don't see two little explosions at the same time. It's pretty brutal, actually. Just exploding when it hits the floor. Realistic, but brutal. Yeah. This could work. And I think this is one of the big differences between a polished game and an unpolished game. If it would just, I mean, I'm going to change these explosions later on, obviously, but if it would just disappears when it hits the floor, or it does a little quick explosion, it makes a huge difference in the amount of polish. And I think that's the power of static events in this case. Because first of all, I'm going to hook this into it, obviously, to show the little explosion. But I'll also hook sound effects into that. Later on, I will hook up all the sound effects from one single point, instead of having them be attached to the airplanes and such. Come to think of it. Oh yeah, that'll be the last lecture. Anyway, spent 20 minutes more on this than I thought I would. So much for quickly doing this. Wasn't this about sending love letters to a girl? Not sure how. Yeah, actually, it was about sending love letters to a girl. So maybe explosions are not the way to go. A link to my playlist? I don't, but I can show you. It's on Apple Music. It's not Spotify or something. So I guess I can open it. I don't know if I can share this. I think I could share it. I just picked all the music that was instrumental. Actually, these are all the instrumental versions of an album from Cell Dweller, which I really like. Oh yeah, I can actually copy it. Full-on mushroom cloud. Explode into hearts. I actually really like that idea. This is the playlist, by the way. Explode into hearts. That's a really fun idea, actually. I can probably make a particle effect that has like a bunch of hearts coming out of it. But I also, let me see, we have some assets already, some models. Yes, we already have a heart model that our artist made. Oh, that's actually a really good idea. I like that a lot. Instead of it being a sphere, I can just change it to a heart. Cube 448. Oh, wow. Okay. Prefabs. Impact. I guess the only thing I have to change here is set to the heart. Oh, no, I have to drag it. This one. Probably change the material as well to be red. Like an actual little heart. Probably not exactly what you meant, but it does fit a little bit more with the theme of love letters. Explode into a bundle of love. Is it booting? Oh. Boom! Oh, this actually works pretty well. That's a great idea. Boom. And also because they're always like just normally, they don't rotate or anything. They're just like little hearts that appear there. That is really fun. That's a great idea. I'm gonna do something else. Now that I was about to quit, but now I'm just gonna do something else as well. I'm gonna move it when it gets spawned locally, I guess. Just over to Y. Game objects. Just move it up a meter. Animation duration slow. Set ease out cubic as well. Same as the alpha. Like you might notice that you can just, the more you start, they're all run concurrently. If you want them to run sequentially, you have to create a sequence, or just like move this to the callback here, to the uncomplete. But I want all of these to run at the same time, so it'll just pop out. I'm actually not sure if this will work. A meter might be way too high. This is almost mushroom cloudy. Meter is way too high. Seems like their spirit is going to heaven or something. It's a little dark. Nice though. 3D particles. I guess I'll make my own 3D particle engine. I don't know if Unity has 3D particles yet. Not really, right? Just 2D. 1 meter is way too far. 32 centimeters, that's fine. And also, don't scale it up to 1, scale it up to 1.6, a little bigger. The compiler is smart enough to make this into a factor of 1.6, 1.6, 1.6. I don't know why it's still... Oh, wait. Oh, I forgot. I'm under the ground, basically, so it's just going up to 32 centimeters above the ground. It shouldn't. I'm moving the local. See this works? Huh. This is a bug. I was moving the local, and then it should only go, it should go 32 centimeters from wherever it hits, but it goes up to 0.32 it seems. Whatever, I'll look into that later. Maybe it's because I'm doing several, no, I'm only doing one move at a time. Yeah, I'll look into it later. But this shouldn't be like this. Oh well. I guess because it's added to the world instead of a parent. Well, I guess spawn. Alright, whatever. Doesn't matter for now. I still like it. Just gonna do it like this: transform dot position dot y plus 0 to 32. So your current position and then 32 upwards. I mean, this shouldn't be a move. Boy, this thing is getting pretty heavy. That's more like it. Now if I can only hit that board. There we go. That's perfect. That's what I wanted. Now we can up this a little bit more again. To maybe 46 centimeters. Anyway. You have no local. The particle things are root objects. Yeah, you're right. That's the conclusion. I'm just adding them to. I'm not adding them to any parents. I'm not even sure if I should. I could actually. Why not add them to effects? It's at 0, 0, 0. Doesn't matter much in this case. But you usually want to keep the scene graph pretty clean. Anyway, I think I'm done for today. Even 3D particles with less than the ability to choose random. Oh, really? I don't think I've ever used it before. There we go. Also messing up my hair. Anyway, I think I'm done for today. Thanks everybody for joining in. 2.5 hours. Little over the time I wanted to do. But it's fine, it's fine. I get, because I couldn't stream last week, I guess this makes up for it a little bit. You guys have a good night. Don't stay up too late, it's Friday. It's no night to go out. Not when you're a gamer. Hashtag gamer. Yeah, you're welcome. This was fun. Thanks for the good suggestions. Could explode into heart. That was a fun suggestion. Come to think of it, we did something like that, but not good enough. And I totally forgot about it. Hashtag epic gamer moment. Oh yeah, Smash. I'm actually playing Cuphead right now, which is difficult. Who knew? And Stardew Valley, which is not difficult, just really charming. But Cuphead is awesome. I love the style. And it's made in Unity. Stardew, I think, is made in XNA, which is also pretty nice. Alright. Have a good night. Have fun. See you guys, not Monday, because there's Mondays off. I'll see you Tuesday. Persona 5, I hear it's great. It's been on my playlist for so long, but I feel like I don't want to start playing it before I've played 1, 2, 3, 4. But some of them are so old. Definitely. Everybody's welcome to join the streams. 21:30. Alright, I gotta go. Good night, guys.